Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of the Art and Business of Writing podcast. I am your host, Chris Jones, where I'm excited today to bring you Zack Miller. Zack Miller joined us on episode 32 last year. Zack is an entrepreneur, author, and television and internet personality with over 2 decades of business experience. Zack has just released a brand new book, and he's coming on today to talk about how you can get influencers not only to endorse your book by putting their own words in it, but also to help promote the book because they are invested in it. So I'm excited to bring you Zack. This is something for nonfiction authors that's a big deal because, as a nonfiction author, when you're writing a piece of work, you definitely want influencers to be a part of your work. You want them either to write your foreword or to praise the book or find something to give you that social proof or that credence that gives your book a little something extra. And Zack is going to dissect how he does that and how he did that with his current book. So without further ado, here's Zack Miller.
Zack, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. You know, when you're the self-appointed mayor of Hustle City, you only need one vote. And I got it.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering about that. I was like, man, that must be an easy thing to rule the town that way.
A guy on my team started doing it, I think as a joke, and then it caught on, and then I guess we just kept going with it. So it's an icebreaker.
That's hilarious, man. Did you ever use Foursquare when it was popular?
What is it called?
Huh?
I'm not familiar with the platform. What is it?
Foursquare?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Years ago, there was a Foursquare platform, and like you go to certain places and check in, and then you could become the mayor of that place based on the number of times you would check in.
Yeah, there was a few places I always wanted to be the mayor of. Chipotle, obviously my own office, and the mayor of Hustle City, obviously. But I never did become the mayor of Hustle City on Foursquare, unfortunately.
So is Hustle City is that your self-proclaimed name for Norfolk?
It's really not city based at all. It's really in a direct kind of push towards people who say they want something but aren't willing to do it, and so I just find that people are wanting the world overnight. They want a specific outcome to happen, and they're just not pushing it, or they're not raising their hand. I mean, to me, it's not about 24/7 hustling or anything like that. Like, and it can be different meanings for different people, but for me, it's about if you want an outcome to happen, you need to raise your hand and go after it. And so many people don't do it. I guess some people in my neck of the woods have kind of adopted it. It wasn't necessarily meant to do that, but, anytime anyone uses our taglines or words that we use, like, I'm cool with that.
No, that's cool, man. Hey, so, and if you guys want to hear more about kind of the raise your hand concept, Zack was on episode 32. Definitely go back and check that out. But hey, did you know, Zack, that your episode 32, where you hopped on and talked about writing and promotion and social media, that was my most downloaded episode?
Well, there you go. No, that's awesome. And it's an awesome feeling to know that I'm number one. I love a good competitive battle, and to the 31 people before me and to the how many in between, you got a lot of work cut out for you.
Yeah. I mean, it had right around 1,600. So it was very popularly downloaded episode, but. So tell me, I know you have this thing with professional wrestling too. I always see you on social media with your wrestling belts and your title belts. Talk about that a little bit. What's that about?
So as a kid, I watched wrestling, WWE, WCW, whatever. Then I went to college and stopped. And then somehow I learned about the WWE Network, which is like their online platform with all their content. And it's a similar platform to one of the things that I built for my company. And it intrigued me to start watching it again. And about 2 years ago, a new client, Xerxes Nabong, who's probably a bigger wrestling fan than me, I met him and he bought me this belt. It's like $400, and I'd always kind of wanted one because I thought it was kind of cool. And he's like, "Oh, you're like the small business champion. Hopefully you'll, be the champ for more businesses in the future. Here's this belt as a token of my appreciation." I'm like, "You just bought me a $400 belt? Like, that's ridiculous." And so I decided at that point that we had already been talking about champions in general, and that we kind of were the champions of small businesses. And so how could we take that and kind of leverage that into our brand? And we've incorporated into a lot. So You see me holding it frequently. It's also an icebreaker, right? And so people are looking for things that, can get them in the door, and that belt helps. And people might laugh, but they remember it. And, to me, being remembered is something that's important. And, WWE is, whether you care or not for it, they're a $1 billion business. They've taken a very small business and turned it into an international powerhouse. Their social media is, they have more followers than any other major sport in the world. And so they're doing something right. And it's interesting to see it, and to try and implement some of the things that they do into our day to day.
Yeah, no, I grew up watching WWE too. I loved it. Every Saturday morning, I was like just glued.
Who was your favorite wrestler?
Growing up, oh, dude, I had so many. I loved Macho Man. I was a big fan of Roddy Piper, Jake the Snake. Like, I tend to like the heels more than the faces as a kid. Because I think a lot of it was because Hulk Hogan like ruled the universe for like 7 straight years, and so you just wanted somebody to win other than Hulk Hogan,
Yeah.
How about yourself?
Probably Ultimate Warrior. Macho Man was a good one too. A lot of the ones that you mentioned have passed away, which is obviously sad.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Shawn Michaels growing up was really popular. The Rock. So if there's 3 people that I would ever want to meet, The Rock is one of them. I don't know. It's just something about having a couple bucks in your pocket and now being, one of the wealthiest people in the country and most famous. There's something like, from a respect standpoint, that you look at that and you go, damn, like that's powerful. And yeah, so those are probably my, a few. The Rock, Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, dude, I love The Rock, man. I enjoy just how his mic work is so good. And I love Stone Cold too. I used to, as a fun thing to do, like as a decompression activity, I would sit back and watch like those compilation videos of Stone Cold stunners.
Yep.
Oh man, good times.
I remember in high school, someone Stone Cold stunned me. Not fun.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that's, it's like, out of nowhere, I just got stunned. I was like, great, I'm not going into wrestling now.
The dream is over. All right. So let's talk about your book, The 1004 Method. How'd you start that? How'd you get that going?
So as my team has grown from the first time I wrote a book, which was called Community, it was about building a small business community in your backyard. My team has grown to a handful of people. And one of the strategies that I used before to try and become an influencer was to write this book about building a small business community around the stories of the stuff that I had done in Southeastern Virginia. I'm not a great writer, but it's made a couple $1,000, and it was all ebook. And, it was something that it took me a long time to do. And, at the time I was proud of it, but I recently in the last year or so brought on a guy named George to really help build other communities through Hatch. And so one of the things that we do is we sell our platform to different communities or cities or schools across the country. And one of the challenges that he was seeing was, hey, everyone in Southeastern Virginia knows you. We get to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and people are like, Zack Miller? Who's that? Hatch? What's that? And so we had this challenge of, hey, we need to get in the door. What's one way that we could do that? And so he had read the book before, and he was like, why don't you just do an update to the book? And so I was like, all right, that sounds okay. I think we could tweak it a little bit, have a second edition, and let's do that. Well, as we started deep diving into it, we realized that it probably would be a smarter decision to just start over and to take some of the basis of the first one, but really start a new chapter, a new book. And so the last one was released in November of 2013. And so it's been 4 years and a lot's changed. I at the time I had no one on my team. And so we decided as a team that, it might be something that we should put together. Same kind of premise, but we've had a lot more success and a lot more failures since then. And so we've been building this platform called 1004, which is really a approach towards growing businesses a different way in a community. And so the numbers mean 1,000 businesses with an average of 4 employees each. So if every community could have 1,000 new businesses started that get to 4 employees, it's 4,000 new employees, where a lot of the traditional ways to recruit and attract and to grow businesses is by moving a large business to your community. And so we kind of flip-flop the mindset of, recruiting large businesses, and instead, from a community standpoint, from an organic standpoint, how can you produce and enhance and grow 1,000 businesses in your backyard? So that whole mindset is what we think of with 1004. And we really wrote the book around that. But I can tell you, it's hard. It's really hard putting out a book. I remember I was thinking about what I wanted to say about this last night. And it's hard putting a book together. I got a lot of friends that have put together books, and they're like, yeah, year, 2 years, 18 months. And, we're trying to get something out in 2, 3, 4, 5 months and still be amazing. And so that's really hard. And, I think that if it was just me at this point and didn't have a team, I would have released it by now. But because we have a team and we're all working on it together to make it really, really strong, it's not going to go out until it's ready. And so it might be 6 months. I hope it's not 6 months from now, but it's important to put something out there that's powerful, especially when you're trying to get other people to really recognize what you're doing as an authority, as someone that's credible, that knows what they're doing, that can help create results.
Right. And, being an entrepreneur, naturally, you're focused on the business and being in the business and building business, but writing doesn't always come, first nature for entrepreneurs. So what was your approach when you came up with the concept of putting the book together? What did you do to flesh it out and frame out the book?
I think that's something that we did a bad job of. We should have, really said, what are the things that we want to do with this book? Who's the audience? And I think because of the way it started with the rewrite to then let's redo the book, we as a team kind of struggled with that. But, looking at it now, it's for people that are looking to grow a small business or a small business community, and ways for them to, do that. And so it's broken up into different sections. One thing that we got a lot of feedback from our early kind of influencers that have read it is, clearly defining the status quo of what you're challenging. And so that's something that we're really trying to double down, triple down on, and really make sure that we explain what that is. And the status quo that we're challenging is really that the same communities have been doing the same way of growing the business community for hundreds of years. And the world has changed, and we need to change that, and we need to evolve with that.
Now, for entrepreneurs who are, who've been in their business, like you have, you've been in the entrepreneurial space, you've helped people build businesses, you've helped them grow their businesses. So you've got all this intellectual property sitting in your head. Like, for entrepreneurs with that sort of mindset, do you recommend that they write books to extend their platform? And what can books do for their platform?
So I definitely think they need to get it out, whether it's through writing a book, a podcast, selfie videos. They need to get the information out. I don't think the specific medium is as important today as it might have been 15, 20 years ago, especially if you're not good at writing, especially if you have hesitations to get stuff out. But I do think your content, what's in your head, needs to get out. And even me, who a lot of people think is very vocal and visible, I feel like I do a very poor job of getting a lot of information out. And so the book is one way to do that. But I think by supplementing it with a podcast or videos on YouTube or Facebook, I think all of those things are important. And I think getting that messaging out and when you're first starting, I don't even think you have to be concise. I think you just have to start getting it out. And I think that's where a lot of people mess up, where they're like, oh, this has to be perfect. And I think there are certain things that need to be perfect. A book needs to be perfect, but not a lot of other things need to be. So if you do a podcast and you mess up, who cares, right? If you write a blog post and it's not the best thing in the world, who cares? If you write a book, that's like a stake in the ground. And so there's not many things that need to be perfect, and a book needs to be, or it needs to be pretty darn close. But from getting your messaging out there, just start. Get on YouTube, Facebook Live, whatever it may be, a podcast. Join this podcast, right? Call up Chris and say, hey, I want you to interview me. Like, all those things are important. But a book, that's one that a book and a movie or a documentary, like those are the things that are like, they need to be the stake in the ground really, really solid.
Oh no, I definitely agree with having a book. Yeah, it definitely has to be done well, because it represents you more than probably anything else that you're going to do. It represents basically how you bring your thoughts together, how you compose your concepts, and then how you want to present yourself to the world.
And I think the world expects a certain thing out of a book too. And if you don't, like they can turn the other way, look at you a little differently if your blog post is one way. But if your book is a little messed up, they're going to think differently. And that's because they understand that a book takes time, where a blog post might take a couple of hours, might take a week. And so I think they're just psychologically, people view them differently.
And I tend to agree with that. Now, with you were able to get some pretty influential people to leave some praise for your book. How did you contact them? How did you get influencers to read your book and then endorse it?
So one thing that was interesting is that this is kind of by chance, is we started this podcast and then the podcast led to the book. And so while interviewing people for the podcast, we started saying, hey, we're writing this book. A lot of it is about the stuff that we just talked about. When we're ready to send you a draft, can we? And people, they just jump on board with it. I mean, like, it's literally that simple. Is, okay, here are the influencers that we want to talk to. We're already interviewing them for our podcast. Now let's tell them we have something else. Maybe add a couple of their quotes to the book. So then they're like, oh, that's so nice. Kind of stroking their ego a little bit, if you will. And then we would just, send them a copy. Everything's been digital so far, so we haven't gotten anything printed. And we would just say, hey, like, when you have a couple of minutes, read this. You might see your name in there, and then let us know what you think. And so what's interesting is we sent it to people that were very different scales of kind of our target. So, like the best of the best to maybe the little guy. And I think that's important in a book, because usually you are going to have a scale of, super influencers to just the person that's going to go to Barnes and Noble and read the book. And, that was something where we even sent it to other authors who have popular books out there and who understand what we're doing. And that's actually been good in getting really solid feedback too. We don't like your tagline of the book, or you're really missing this point, or one thing that was really interesting was, from a feedback perspective, is we didn't talk about what the numbers meant until like page 26 or something. And we never noticed it. And I think a lot of times, because we're so attached to something, or because we've been looking at something so long, we forget what it's saying and we read it a different way, or we comprehend it a different way. And then when you get a separate set of eyes on something, you recognize, oh, I've missed that point. And so now we readdress and everything. But so we had a list of people that we wanted on our podcast, and we've been getting them on our podcast. And then we basically said, hey, we have a book associated with the stuff that we're doing. We'd like to share it with you, and then give us your feedback. It was pretty simple to get stuff like that. And then throughout time, people that have said positive things about 1004 in general, we've recontacted them and said, hey, this is the quote that you used before. Are you cool with us using it? And so a president of a major university, the first CTO of America has said something, a venture capitalist has said something. And so by just having those quotes, even if they don't think that the book is amazing, you have these credible sources that are endorsing you, that allows you to get kind of to that next step. And I think that's powerful.
No, that is, when I saw, the people that you had who had left quotes to the book, I was like, wow, that is amazing. And you talked about, how, you and I had talked a little off the cuff about just how easy it is to reach out to influencers. So for people who, you talked about it a little bit because you had a podcast, and that's how you used that to get people in and use that as leverage. But for the person who doesn't have a podcast and they want to reach out to influencers, what can they do? How can they attract influencers without having a medium for them?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing to do is just say, hey, right? I mean, like, hey, I'm writing a book. It's on this. I see that you're writing about other things, or you're an influencer in this. I think what I'm talking about might be a good fit for you. You could go into like a really like hard pitch then, or just create the relationship. So there was here's a great example. There was a lady who was writing for a major publication. I can't recall the actual publication, but she wrote something about the Silicon Valley effect, the Silicon Valley names, where different cities are trying to be like Silicon Alley, Silicon Prairie, and basically renaming their areas to be similar to Silicon Valley, and why that's bad from a branding perspective. And so I reached out to this lady and I said, hey, I just read your article about this. And so whatever the headline was, I used to name my area Silicon Anchor. So I had ties. So we were similar in that respect, where something that she was writing about was something that I've lived. And I said, I think it was a mistake that I named this area Silicon Anchor. But I loved your article, and I'm looking forward to reading more. And so I'm basically just stroking her ego. And then when it's time to provide her something else, I already had that relationship with her. So I'll follow her on Twitter or Facebook and like some of her posts, or give her a comment, or send her a lead when appropriate. Like, I think all too often people are going in saying, hey, me, when instead they could say, hey, I just like what you're doing, and I just wanted to say thanks for doing it. And then at a later time, go in and say, hey, I wrote this book. You seem to be an expert in writing about these things, or being a producer about these things. Can I send you a copy?
And so with that approach, like, I mean, it makes it harder for a person to say no to you at that point. Do you agree, or do you find that to be true, that, once you've built that relationship, once you've kind of connected and had dialogue with that person to a degree, that they're more receptive?
They're definitely more receptive. I mean, you can definitely still get the no, right? I mean, there's definitely people who, this is not 100% strategy. So there's definitely people that we put on the podcast, told about the book, and then sent them the book, and they're like, I don't have time. And we're like, okay. I mean, you can't force someone to do anything. But if you just imagine if the first thing you do with this relationship is just send them a copy of the book. I mean, maybe they read it, but maybe they get hundreds of books a day. What sets you apart? So there's all these different strategies on outreach that I think are important. And if you don't do anything, nothing will happen. And so you have to constantly be trying different methods. So one of the things that we're doing, from not an influencer standpoint, but to get in front of different cities or communities that we want to provide business to, is we are going to send them a couple of books. So we're going to get some books printed, and then send them with a handwritten card and saying, hey, this is our gift to you. And so that's a way for us to hopefully spend, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 bucks. And then a little bit of time writing a handwritten card saying, hey, we wrote this book. We appreciate what you're doing in your community. Now, hopefully you read it, call us, and then we can start talking about maybe doing some work with you in your community. And so that was the whole strategy from the beginning, is how can you get in front of these people? You cold call them, you email them, it seems like they don't know you. Okay, let's write this book, send them a couple of copies, handwritten card, and say, hey, this is what we do. This is how we think. Read it over the weekend and let us know what you think. And then that starts a different conversation. And it is a long conversation. It's a long process. But if we can get in a couple of those doors, we can get in a couple of doors and get our product in different places. And so it's a long process. It's a long form strategy, but we think that it's something that is going to work out well for us. And so, TBD, I guess, right? We'll see what happens.
Right. No, and I think and you hit on something that's very good, that, when I talk to people, I always remind them that, book writing is a long game. I think people get in the mindset that, wow, you wrote a book, you must be making, making lots of money doing it. When book, for some authors, it's not even about the book sales itself. It's more about an influencer platform. Well, I need my book because I want to become a speaker. I need my book because I want some level of authority that I want to get in, or I want to reach a market. Like you just said, I want to tap into a market that I'm not in. So the book is my entree to that market. What are some other ways that, for an entrepreneur, that a book can help jumpstart their business, or take them places that, they probably couldn't get in otherwise?
Well, for us, it's definitely not a direct money making platform, right? So we're not writing this to make a lot of money. We're using it to get in front of different doors. Other things to do. I mean, you said speaking. It could be to, it could be to get in front of specific people. It could be to use to start a podcast to then say that you are the author of XYZ book. So then when you talk to, or you're introducing yourself to specific guests, you can say, hey, I'm the author of this, and we're looking to bring on people like yourself. It's all about credibility, I think. And so whether it's a book, whether it's a podcast, whether it's hosting a show, whatever it might be, you're looking for credibility. And a book is one of those things that probably has the most credibility out of anything. And if you can take that book and somehow game the system and get on a big list, Wall Street Journal, New York Times list, somehow you can do that, then you can say you're a, Wall Street Journal, New York Times bestseller. Our game is not to do that, but there are plenty of people who do that and then can leverage that to get to the next step. My good buddy Chris Hill wrote his first book to get speaking engagements. Well, that first book did so well that he got a publisher to pick up his next book. And stuff like that, could get you nice chunks of change, more authority and credibility. And I think all those things, you have to look at this entire thing as a long game, right? Don't try and get one single home run to win. Instead, it's a series of actual at-bats that are singles or walks or doubles. And you put those things all together and it becomes a game, a season, and a career. And I think that career is really, really important. I think we talked about baseball last time.
Yeah.
And so if you're doing it to make a quick buck, you might make that quick buck and you may never do anything ever again. And to me, I'm trying to make the Hall of Fame, and I don't know what the Hall of Fame looks like. I don't know what the requirements are, but that's how I think. And so I'm 33 years old now, and I know I got a lot of life to live and a lot of business to do. And so I just try and move a little bit forward every day. And that's it. I'm not trying to win today. If I get a home run today, that's nice, but it's not going to be the defining chapter in my career. I'm going to have a series of defining chapters in my career.
Right. And I like what we talked about earlier when we talked about, using the book as a platform. The thing to think about, and I think for all people who are listening, who are entrepreneurs and are thinking, hey, maybe I should write a book, but don't have the mindset we talked about before where it's just a book. I've got a book now. What do I do with it? You've got the opportunity to leverage that into a series of books. If the book lends itself to that, if you have a particular type of business, you can turn one book into 5 books talking about various aspects of business.
Yeah. And you have to be thinking of the marketing behind it too, because if all you do is write it and then you put it on Amazon and hope that it does well, I don't think that's not a good avenue to take. And so, you need to be constantly pushing, hey, this book is out every day. And if you don't, the book might never sell and you're not going to be able to get that credibility over and over and over again. And so it's important. And, whether it's marketing it through your bio and the way that people introduce you, through, posting about it every once in a while on social, sending an email to someone, adding a signature in your email that says, hey, I wrote a book. All these little strategies, you do 1,000 of them, they add up to a nice little career. But the thing is, you have to do a lot of different little things to make one big thing, because most of us don't have publishers behind us. Most of us don't have these big marketing budgets behind us. So we have to get very, very creative in the way that we distribute. And if we don't, and we do one thing, we're probably not going to see very strong results.
Right. No, and that's the thing. It's the mentality. If you, a lot of people look at Amazon as, well, I'm on Amazon. Why isn't anybody finding me? It's the world's largest search engine. Why can't they find me? Well, they can't find it because they don't know you. Like you said before, people in Wyoming don't know Zack Miller from Southeast Virginia. And it's the same thing for authors, is that, once Amazon is just the vehicle. It's really the break-in. Okay. Now you've got this platform that's public that people can find you, you've got to send people that way. You've got to send people there. And so, at that point, once you publish the book, you become a publisher, and you've got to put your boots on the ground and start talking about your book, telling people about it, putting it in people's hands, finding ways to engage with people with your book. I mean, the real game isn't the actual writing. The real game is after you've published it.
And that's why I think I'm so intrigued by something like WWE, where I look at it, and yes, I enjoy it from an entertainment standpoint, which is, ridiculous sometimes. But look at what they do from an advertising standpoint. And I think if other people, so if a listener is wondering like, well, what do I do? Well, start seeing what ESPN does when they're promoting the next football game, right? See how often they're promoting a specific game. Look at WWE and see how often and with specific mediums in the way that they're promoting one specific show. Look at what an author is doing to get their book out. They're going on a tour. They're talking about it on their website. They're doing blog posts about it. They're doing a series of actions, usually dozens or hundreds of actions, and take a page of notes and say, okay, these are the things that these people are doing. See which ones you have access to do and copy it. I mean, the playbook is literally in front of us. And so, you're watching a football game and see how often Monday Night Football is promoted in all of ESPN's publications, on apps and advertisements and just everywhere. Like, if you can start looking at that as a case study saying, okay, they're promoting this pretty hard. I need to promote that pretty hard too. The content exists, right? Their book is the game, but the way that they're promoting it is by distributing it on a multitude of different mediums for a lot of people to see. And that's what you need to do to be seen. Just because it's there doesn't mean that people are going to be a part of it. Just because it's there doesn't mean people are going to tune in. You still got to remind them and introduce them and show them and give them a reason why they should tune in.
Right. No, that's exactly right. Which is why I always tell people, finish your book before you start it. And it sounds almost counterintuitive. What do you mean finish your book before you start it? Well, start with a synopsis. Basically, that's basically you writing the entire game plan. So you know what the end game is going to be before you start writing the book. That way okay, well, I'm going to write these are the chapters that I want to write. These are the places that it's going to go. These are the categories I'm going to put in Amazon. This is the back cover. It's like you basically have the entire blueprint laid out before you set a word on the page.
It's a good strategy. And I think if you don't do that, I think we knew parts of that when we were writing this next book, the 1004 Method. But there were things that we definitely forgot about that. And when we started getting it to other people, we recognized that, we forgot to do that. And so, it's know what you're writing, know who you're writing it to. Like, what's the end goal? Like, we knew the end goal, and the end goal hasn't changed, but it can be a challenge. And I think that people should definitely think about that blueprint and use it, Chris.
Yeah. And talk about, you said that you sent books out to people and they were giving you suggestions and feedback, and some influencers said yes, some said no. Like, for people who this is like their first foray into really putting themselves out there. Cause when you write a book, you're putting yourself into the book. Every bit of you, every fiber of you is going into this thing. How do you deal with either just some of the criticism, some of the feedback, so that really you're not taking it personally, but you're looking at it as this person cares enough to write feedback on my book so that I can improve my work?
I think you just said it. This person cares enough to give me feedback. If you're asking for feedback, you better be willing to handle the worst feedback possible. It's a bold statement, but it's the truth. Like, if you're not willing to hear the best and worst advice, the best and worst thoughts on your baby, then don't ask for it. Don't write the book, because you're going to, right? As you grow your credibility, your status, you are going to have people that absolutely love you and absolutely hate you. And that's just the game that we play, right? The New England Patriots are one of the greatest sports teams ever, or at least in the last 2 decades, right? They have a lot of haters. Do you think they care? The same should be for your book. If you're writing something, you actually should. We know, because we're writing a controversial book, that we're going to have haters. And we're okay with that. We actually think it enforces what we're saying and allows us to leverage that. And so, people are going to critique what you do, and that's okay. Taylor Swift, haters going to hate. Like, who cares? Like, you just have thick skin. Understand that you're going to get feedback. You're going to get feedback when you're not expecting it. And if you are actually requesting feedback, expect the worst. Actually, I want the worst. When we got our first edit, a guy that we run a course for, a workshop for, his name is Jim Carroll. He works for the Small Business Development Center in Hampton Roads. We sent him the book, and he spent 15 hours reading, reviewing, editing it. And when I got it, there's a lot of red. And he's like, look, you're on to something, but here's what I think. And the pages that didn't have red in it, I was like, did you skip a page? Like, are you okay? Like, I think you just have to deal with it. And to me, I've been doing this long enough that I know that this stuff's going to happen. If the first time you hear that your baby's ugly, it does hurt, but you just have to deal with it, and you just have to, grow into that, into your world, because that's not going to stop. The more you grow, the more people will hate you, the more people will love you, right? And most people will be negative than positive. I mean, all you have to do is look on any social media, right? And so if you can't handle that, be careful, because it might get ugly.
All right. Now, I want to talk about influencers one last time for those who want to pursue influencers for their book. They're working on it and think, oh, well, that's a great idea. I'd love to have some praise to add in the front of my book. Where do they need to start to find influencers? Like, would you recommend them going on to Facebook or to Twitter or how did you do it? What do you do?
So we knew our target customer is someone that is running a specific ecosystem in a city across the country. And so we know the keywords that are associated with that: founder, community builder, economic development manager. So take that keyword, add in cities. So in our case, we know the city, and type that into Google. That's the first way you can find something like that. You could look at books that might be similar to yours and look for reviews on Amazon, or people that already have given reviews or on the book. So if you look at different covers, so go to Barnes and Nobles or Books A Million, if that's still open, or whatever the other big bookstore is, go to your school's bookstore and just start looking at books in your industry, books in your topic, and see who is providing the reviews on the covers, on the back covers, and write those down and, validate that they are like legit people that could be influencers that could help you, and then create a relationship with those people. Again, I think the playbooks, the blueprints are all in front of us. We're just really lazy and we don't do it. And so we'd rather write the book and then not market the book, because the book's the greatest thing in the world and it should automatically make $1 million, when we have access to go to a bookstore, to a library, and say, okay, well, who's endorsing this? Right? Or what are the keywords in my city or in my industry? Use that and find the people that are talking about that. And so if you type, small business champion, Fargo, North Dakota, something's going to pop up. It might be about just the city in Fargo. It might be a blog post about Fargo, North Dakota. Who wrote that article? Or who is quoted in the article? That person is more likely to either be the influencer that you're looking for or knows the influencer. And so create a relationship with that person, reach out to them and figure out if they are that person. And if they are, take the blueprint that we provided earlier and reach out to them. And so it's very easy to find these things. I'm actually looking at a book right now. There is no influencer on the cover. So that's a bad example. But there are plenty of books in the world that have these influencer quotes, and you're using it for credibility. But it's super easy to find these people. Now, getting them to say yes is a totally different story, but that's why you create that relationship with them. They become a fan of you. And because they're a fan of you, when you ask them for something, they're more likely to say yes. And that's ultimately what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I know. Whenever I see a book that has, lots of influencers inside of it, or lots of kind of praise and things like that, it gives it more credibility to me. Like I'm more intrigued by what's inside the book because people took the time to write those reviews.
Yeah. And I mean, it helps sales, helps you make that decision. I think whether it's a book, a website, a collateral from a booth, like all those things are important. If you see an article that's written by a big brand about you, there something psychologically is making you go, if this brand is talking about this person, if this brand is talking about this brand, maybe I should look into this.
Yep. And I'll tell you something cool that I saw. I was at the bookstore and I saw a cop, Milo Yiannopoulos wrote a book called Dangerous, and Milo's he's very lightning rodish, and he did something that I thought was probably some of those brilliant book marketing that I've seen in a while. Have you seen his book?
I've not.
He put all of his negative reviews all over his book.
I thought about doing stuff like that in general about my business.
Yes.
I haven't done it yet, but I mean, that's definitely something in my mind where it's like, why don't we put the negative stuff out there? Now, we don't have a lot of negative stuff, right? We definitely have some. But what would happen if you do that, right? Like, because everything is so transparent about positive stuff, not negative stuff. And so, like with our platform, when we're selling to customers to buy in, I mean, we'll blatantly say, like, if you're expecting results overnight, don't buy this, right? If you're expecting to get a 6-pack by working out using our platform, like you would if it was exercise, like this is not going to happen overnight. We're going to teach you guys how to work and the ways that you need to work to improve your business. And so if you join a gym and think that you're going to get buff overnight, we're not the platform for you. And so I think that can be difficult for people. But yeah, that negative piece, like I've really been contemplating like a way to implement that into it, because sometimes like we have customers that will come and we have courses that will teach them how to start a business. And within 2 months, they realize, I don't want to start a business. You actually taught me that this isn't for me. And to me, that's a win, right? But to other people, that might not be the stroke that's necessary to get them to go. And I love the negative thing. I'm definitely gonna have to check that out, because I think, again, it's a way to get someone to look at you. And, if that works, maybe that's something to do.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's bestseller bound, but I think that's the funny thing is that when you know yourself that well as he knows himself, he knows, okay, if I put my negative reviews on there, it's going to galvanize my audience, because now my audience is definitely going to want to read my book because it's so loaded with all the hate that people have. Because that's part of his platform. Part of his platform is that he loves trolls, and he loves dealing with trolls, and he loves debating trolls. And so it works.
That's awesome. I mean, we were talking about before, like, how do you deal with the critiques? Sometimes you're asking for the critiques. Sometimes you're not. Oftentimes you're not looking for the critique and you get it, or you get some sort of information, and you just gotta take it and be like, okay, like, listen to it, care that person is providing feedback, but I mean, you can't let it get to you. I actually got something right before I went to bed last night, and right as I woke up this morning, someone sent me a text at like 3 a.m. I did not wake up at 3 a.m., but when I woke up, I got a text, and it was the same thing. That's basically a troll saying something, and my response is, okay, like, who cares? Like, I'll probably reach out to the person and say, hey, thanks for promoting us. I appreciate that, and I mean it like that. Like, they're literally promoting us now, right? So our brand is being promoted through some troll or some hate. Thank you. Thank you for the free publicity, right? I will absolutely take it. I mean, I'm not worried about it hurting my brand, because I know that the people that we help, we have true credibility from, and we've done that thousands of times. So, the couple of haters out there, whatever.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. I think that, it's healthy for an Amazon review to have a couple of 1 and 2 stars, because then it really shows that people actually read the book and disliked it. Even if that's not the result. For me, I'd rather have any kind of rating than no rating at all.
My only issue with ratings, reviews, 5 stars, 1 star, two, three, four, whatever, is there is no, like, is it a rubric? Is that what it's called? Like, where it's like, this is what a 1 should look like. This is what a 2 should look like. This is what a 3, a 4, a 5. And so to me, like, with Yelp, and I think this can be similar to books, like, if you're a dive bar, but you're the best dive bar ever, are you a 1 star because you're a dive bar? Or you are a 5 star because you're the best of the dive bars? And then if you're like a fine dining, you know, are you a 5 star because you're fine dining? Like, some people look at reviews one way and be like, well, you know, my fine dining experience was lovely, but then my dive bar experience was also lovely. Are they both 5 stars? Or is it because that I was in a dive bar that should be a 1 because it's a dive bar? And so I think it's actually important when we're consuming the reviews to understand, to take them with a grain of salt, that there is no guide to know. Like, I've seen stuff where people are like, 3-star, loved everything about this place, 3-star. Like, paragraphs of positivity, 3-star. And I look at that and I go, well, why did you get a 3-star? If all you gave it was praise, why didn't you give it a 5?
Right.
And so, like, that irks me about ratings, because all you say is positive things, yet you don't give it a full 5. And so what are you actually grading? And what are you comparing it to? And so whether it's your book and someone's like, this is the best book ever, 3 stars. You're like, what? Why did you give me 3 stars if this is the best book ever? Well, it's the best book ever in this category. Oh, this is the best meal I've had at a dive bar, but it's not the best meal ever, so I gave you a middle of the road. And so my buddy actually is a community manager locally, and I had the same conversations with him, and he's like, yeah, there's no rubric. And I'm like, you know, that's kind of unfortunate, because other people are graded as their business through these platforms. And I think it can be a challenge. And so people are like, well, it's context, you know, so you got to read it with context. But still, I think that's still kind of difficult.
Yeah, no, those are all good points. All good points, for sure. So in wrapping up, I'd like for you just to share some parting advice for entrepreneurs who are looking to do the things that we talked about in the podcast, who are looking to start writing from somewhere, figure out their topic, and put it on the market with some influencer backing.
Yeah. Books are hard. You know, there's so many unknowns still, right? So, I mean, you're going to spend so much time on something. To have that unknown, it's kind of scary. But to know that if you can put something together that is meaningful to someone. So have a couple conversations with people first and say, hey, I'm thinking about writing a book about this. This is the outcome that I want. This is who I think will read it. You know, if you can have conversations like that, I think you should do that in business too. Like, don't start a business until you have conversations with people. But if you can take that kind of process of, okay, I think this is who my book is for. This is what I'm going to write. So this is what I'm going to produce. And this is the way that I'm going to do it. If you can't find people through your conversations that are going to praise that, endorse that, are going to buy it, like, you probably shouldn't write the book. But at the same time, if you're looking to do it from a credibility standpoint, you know, be thinking about that. And so, hey, I'm going to write this book. I'm looking for it to be credibility and to become an authority. Who are the people that I want to be an authority to? And start creating those relationships with those people. And, you know, it's like those relationships are probably the most important thing. And if you can't create those relationships, you know, are you going to be able to be that source that you want to do? But, you know, books are hard. They take a lot of time, but, you know, good on you for trying. Good on you for putting it together. You know, I think all too often we love to hate first instead of praising. And I think people should be praised more. And so if you're thinking about doing something, you know, get some of those early wins in, find those people that you're looking to connect with, and then do it. Because at the end of the day, you'll be happy about it. And, you know, it could get you a little bit closer in the step into you trying to become a Hall of Famer like I am. And so don't be so hard on yourself and just do it.
All right. Thanks, Zach. Guys, we have been with the champion and the mayor of Hustle City, Zack Miller, talking about books and influencers. Zach, thanks for joining me again.
Thank you. The champion is out.
And one last thing before you take off, let everyone know how they can reach you.
Sure. They can go startwithhatch.com. So that's startwithhatch.com. They can actually check out the book at startwithhatch.com/method. The book's the 1004 method. And email Zack, Z-A-C-K, at startwithhatch.com, or on social, it's Zack, Z-A-C-K, Miller 84 on all social accounts.
Awesome. Hey, Zack, thanks so much. Have a great day.
Always a pleasure, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, author, Chris here. I want to tell you about a program that I'm really excited about called Group Gold. For a long time, I would post on my Facebook fan page only to find crickets. Very few interactions, very few connections. That is before I discovered Facebook groups through the program Group Gold. Facebook Group Gold program is the most complete one of its kind to help you grow, engage, and monetize your Facebook group. Mark Mawhinney, the program creator, will walk you through every aspect of how to create, manage, and run your Facebook group so that your tribe is coming to you. Makes it easier, doesn't it? When you've got people interacting with you because they want to be there. That's the beauty of Facebook groups over Facebook fan pages. Ever since I started the Facebook Group Gold program, I've been growing my group, building my audience, and I've got people in there who are active and who want to be there, hanging out with me every single day. You can have that too. Just visit my website, www.readyrightlaunch.com, and under the offer tab, select Group Gold. Then you can see for yourself the magic of Facebook groups.